Well, welcome to our post Valentine's Day episode. For those of you that didn't get enough sugar during Valentine's Day or unfortunately had to give up sugar for Lent on Valentine's Day, we have a very special guest today. We have Crystal Mether from Literary Flower, which is an amazing company that merges literature with cookies. And she's going to be here to talk to us about a lot of the endeavors that she's doing in Nashville right now and some business partnerships. Next, we're going to talk about the movie The Sweet East, which is opening up at the Belcourt today. And as always, we're going to give you our weekly film rundown. So let's go ahead and get started and bring Crystal out. So Crystal, how are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you?
I am doing great. So why don't we talk a little bit about what it is that you do exactly? Because it's a very specific and really original business that caught my eye.
Thank you. Yeah, so I own Literary Flower LLC. So we're a home-based bakery and we create cookies and marshmallow treats and cakelets, all themed after either books or authors.
Yeah. And I know we were trying to have you on last week, but I'm guessing you had a massive rush for Valentine's Day and
Yes.
kind
Yes.
of in a yeah, I would imagine that would have been a lot. So what led you to start this business and how long have you been in operation?
So I've always been a big reader. I've always been a big reader, and in the last 10 or so years, I definitely started growing my collection of books. But I started getting into baking a few years back, and my husband, he made a comment about you should really consider selling cookies. And I was like, no, I'm just doing this for fun. And then the more time went on, the more I was like, well, maybe. So I just decided I had done events and things like that for my mom when she had a candle company. So I was already familiar with doing events, and I loved, going out, meeting people, going to new areas. So I decided to go for it. The literary part came in because, as I said, I've always been a big book reader, book lover, collector. But my husband, he jokingly said, well, your chocolate chip cookie, you could call it My Precious. And I was like, that's such a cute idea. And then I was like, well, that lemon cookie, there's a lemon recipe that I got from his mom, and it's been passed down 4 generations. I believe I'm the fifth generation to get this recipe, and it's a fantastic lemon cookie. And I was like, well, I could call the lemon cookie Lemony after Lemony Snicket. And so it just kind of snowballed from there. So,
So why Nashville for this business? Is this were you already in Nashville when you decided to go ahead and do it? And sort of what is it like running a business like this in Nashville?
yeah, so I live in the area. We've been in the area, well, I've been in the area since I was 10, like Wilson County. Um, and when my husband and I got married, we bought a home out in Lebanon, but we spend a lot of time in Mount Juliet, Hermitage, and Nashville since we have family. And we work in Nashville as well. So, but running a business in Nashville has been wonderful. I think a really wonderful thing about Nashville is that they do want to be supportive of small businesses. And all of the small businesses that I've had the pleasure of working with have just been phenomenal. Like, even other bakers in the area, they're all pretty supportive of each other. They share each other's stuff. They'll like send recommendations your way, like it's a really positive, from my experience, it's been a really positive, welcoming community.
Yeah. So as far as I understand it, a lot of where you sell your baked goods is with business partnerships at other locations or markets or fairs or events like that. So what are some past collaborations that you've done with other businesses in the area or other markets in the area?
Yeah, so gosh, there's been quite a few. Um, So last year, Danger Zone Video, you're familiar with Danger Zone Video for Pride Month. We actually got together and we did a pop up, and I had pre order pickups there, but I also had Pride items available for sale. And then they had a massive VHS sale as well. So, what was neat about that event was that we also donated a portion of the proceeds from the day to LGBTQ nonprofits in the area. So I donated to the Trevor Project, and then they donated to an organization that helps provide housing for LGBTQ youth.
Awesome. And so other places, I know I was noticing looking at your website that Where do you sell most? Do you just take private orders and deliver, or are there other sort of markets in the area as well?
Oh yeah, there's so many events. Gosh, I have three coming up in March alone. But I do take online orders for local pickup, either in Lebanon or Mount Juliet. And then I do a lot of events, and I will do pop-ups, especially around the holidays. I'll do pop-ups at local businesses just so people have, somewhere to find me in person.
Yeah, and I really want to know about the process and how you turn it on and off, because if I were in your position, I would just be going down the bookstore and just writing down various names for various recipes. So I guess starting to ask the question, do you get the recipe first and then find a book or an author that fits it? Or do you go the other way and think, oh, wow, well, there's this and I'm going to make up a recipe for a cookie? Which
Yeah, really, it depends. Sometimes, like, I do have a running list of cookie ideas that I think sound really good and I want to work on the recipe development for it. But then other times I'll be reading a book and there'll be a really memorable line and I'm like, oh, I want to do a book after or a cookie after this line from the book. Like the Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I Remember You is a really big moment in the book. And so I created a cookie. It was actually a turtle cookie. So it was chocolate, pecans, caramel, and I called it I Remember You. It's probably one of my more obscure cookie names. Like not a lot of people get it, but those that have read the book instantly they get the reference. So really, it can just vary. Sometimes I'll think of a good pun. Other times I think of a recipe, and um, I think of something that I think might a book that I want to try to tie it to.
Awesome. So we've talked a lot about books, and I know, one of the great things about Nashville, even though it's Music City, and that's kind of the stereotype, is it's a very literary city. I just found out, I think yesterday, that the Southern Book Award winners both came from Nashville this year, Ann Patchett and Margaret
Oh, wow.
Rankle, and we have Parnassus, we have all of these great bookstores. So, what are some of the places that you like to go to around town that sell books or that have really great sort of literary hubs in them?
Yeah. So I excuse me. We frequent McKay a lot as well, because I also I love purchasing new books, but I also like going for first edition, first print. So I often have to, go to used bookstores as well. I have a lot of luck that way. So we and my husband's a big gamer, so we go to McKay often, and then we kind of split up. But I go to McKay pretty often. Like you mentioned, Parnassus is a huge one. I've actually gone to a couple of literary events that they've hosted over the years. Like they had R.L. Stein, so I got to meet him, and I actually had him sign some of my Goosebumps. They hosted that. Christopher Paolini from Aragon, the Aragon series, they hosted him a couple years ago, so that was wonderful getting to meet him and having him sign our books. I'm pretty sure that it was through them that Stephen King came to the Ryman, and I went to see him as well when he came to town. Didn't get a signed book, unfortunately. They only had, I think, 400 that were randomly mixed in the piles, so it was luck of the draw. Um, but yeah, Parnassus hosts so many wonderful authors, and other shops do too. I believe Bookshop Nashville recently had some, and they have events every single month. We have Novelette Booksellers. They do fun events as well. I believe they're doing a writer's retreat. Might be later this month. But no, it's just wonderful how many fun, unique events each shop comes out with and hosts.
Yeah. Have you been to the Southern Festival of Books before?
No, but it is very, very big on my list. I actually just reached out to them yesterday because I'm really hoping to be able to be a vendor. Because that would just be so much fun to be a vendor there and get to interact with so many book lovers. Because I mean, I have done literary themed events as well. I've done quite a few through the Hermitage. Andrew Jackson's The Hermitage. They've done poetry and Edgar Allan Poe Living History event, where they had, I believe his last name's Wissinger, Charles Wissinger. He, dresses as Poe and he recites some of his famous tales. They also did Legend of Sleepy Hollow. They did A Christmas Carol, which was really neat because it was Gerald Dickens, which is the great great grandson of Charles Dickens. So he reads a Christmas Carol. So that was fun because we got to do a themed menu for each event and just interact with people that are clearly fans. But to be able to be at the Southern Festival of Books, it's just such a larger scale, so many people. It would just be so much fun.
Yeah, we did a wonderful interview with them right before last. It was one of the best interviews I think that I've ever done with the group, and they're just so passionate. And I know
Yeah,
just for a fact, just walking around the tents, like some literary cookies in the middle of this thing would just be excellent. I could see you doing really, really well there. So
we're
let's talk a little bit about some of your favorite authors. Not necessarily the authors that maybe have inspired your baked goods, but just in general, like what really got you started reading and this passion for reading,
ooh.
or who?
So there's been a couple. So I grew up in Puerto Rico, so English is technically my second language. So when we were preparing to move to Tennessee, my mom, she wanted me to primarily be speaking English in preparation. And so I started reading a lot more books in English. And one of the first, when I had first moved here, one of the first series that I just fell in love with and just was going through them so quickly was A Series of Unfortunate Events. So that to me is a really big one just because I loved those books. And I feel like it's also kind of an introductory book into like like darker stories, like it's some of those are pretty messed up. Like those poor kids. So I feel like that was the introductory one into the darker books or, sadder books. Um, so those really started my love of reading, and I went through them so quickly. And then I think I was about 13. I was at a yard sale again buying used books, and I picked up a paperback copy of Misery by Stephen King. And I had never read any of his books before, hadn't owned any of them. And it was such a beat up copy. And I read it and I just loved it so much. And after that, I went to the library at the school and I started just going through all of the Stephen Kings that they had on the shelf. And from there, once I got my own place, I started collecting on a larger scale. So I started picking up more and more of his books. And I think currently I have to have at least almost 80. So of just Stephen King alone. But yeah. And I actually am very excited because I just this week crossed off one of my like lifelong dream books, and it's a signed Stephen King. So
That's awesome. I'm guessing you have the same problem that I do with movers where they come and see your books and then
yeah,
like you can never call them back after that. They're just like, I'm not dealing with this. I've had so many movers ghost me in my life.
you avoid eye contact.
Yeah, I'm so sorry to do this to you and all of that. So it's always nice. I mean, and that's something too that I feel like with books has been very special and very counterintuitive lately. There's been a lot of talk. I've had this discussion with Jesse before where Best Buy is getting rid of physical media in terms of Blu-rays and DVDs, but there seems to be this resurgence of the book. I mean, we thought 10 years ago the Kindle was going to kill it or the Nook was going to
Yeah.
kill it, and it's looking like the paper's actually killing the Kindle and those books. So, what do you think's behind that? Like, what is it about reading that, even more so than this resurgence of vinyl that we've had, or kind of this resurgence of VHS and some of these analog technologies that Danger Zone and Jesse sort of tread in? Like, why is the book making this massive comeback to the point that I go into a Target, I can't find any movies, but there's 4 extra shelves of books than there were the last time I was there before Christmas?
Yeah, no, I definitely noticed that as well. Like, there's barely any movies anymore. So I think a big part of it is the nostalgia. I especially noticed during the pandemic, like there was such a resurgence, especially like book talk, and they might have existed beforehand, but I feel like that's when I definitely started seeing them more and more. Bookstagram, book talk. Um, I think during the pandemic, when people had so much more time on their hands because you couldn't really go anywhere, couldn't travel, couldn't do anything. I think people just started reading because they actually had the time for once, and I think a lot of them discovered like, hey, I used to love doing this. This brings me so much joy. I think books can offer an escape often. You can escape, go to whatever your favorite genre is. It just offers you an escape. They're just fun. So I think during the pandemic, when people had more time, they started reading more. They realized how much they loved it, and they started collecting again. Because I know, well, I've most of my library probably was about 3 4 years ago, but I mean, I still read quite a bit every year. And during the pandemic, I definitely started reading a lot more physical books, not just audiobooks as well. Um, Sorry, went out on a little tangent there, but no, I think that that is part of it. Just the escape, and they rediscover their joy and love of reading.
So outside of Stephen King, what are your other favorite authors, and what are like kind of the best parts of your collection? Like besides this the signed Stephen King, like the books that you just say, wow, these are my favorites. These are the ones I would take anywhere.
Hmm, that's a good question. I have a lot of leather bound books, leather-bound classics. I have it somewhere. Uh, I would love to have all. I think every book lover's dream is like the Beauty and the Beast, like library with the rolling ladder. Like that. That for me. I always tell my husband, if we were to win lotto, that's the first thing. Like we're buying land. Don't care about any. Well, the kitchen. I care about the kitchen, but the library and the kitchen. That's it. Like that. That would be the dream. Floor to ceiling bookshelves with the ladder. And I would love more than anything to have all leather bound books. I think it's so beautiful. They hold up so well. They're just classic. Um, but I guess some of my favorites, well, I guess the new one, the Stephen King, that's signed. But I do have all of the original Goosebumps, and I do have a couple of them that I had R.L. Stine sign as well. I actually have assigned a series of unfortunate events, which was really, really wonderful. Some of my other favorite authors, I'm trying to think. There are certain authors where anything they put out, I'm probably going to go ahead and read it as soon as I can. Mary Kubica is a big one. She's really big on thrillers. Lisa Gardner as well. She has so many. I have not caught up, but I discovered her or read her books for the first time a couple years ago, and I probably have about 25 to 30 of them now. Um, she has quite a few. But she's a wonderful author as well. I'm really into thrillers, mysteries, things like that.
Yeah, and I actually found this very strange mystery cookbook at Dollar Tree one time, and it's like we're trying to figure out like is it actually like mystery writers recipes, or is like recipes based, and it was actually their recipes, so it's like Charlene Harris's chicken soup recipe kind of thing. So there's this like, there is this sort of strange, I mean, and I get it, but this overlap between food and books. So what do you think is behind that? I mean, it seems to be kind of like a subculture of a subculture in some ways.
Yeah, I think it's just fun. I think it allows you to immerse yourself even more into the book. Like I don't know. And I've also heard of people that if they read a romance or something and she's baking Christmas cookies, or they're like, man, I need to bake Christmas cookies. I haven't baked Christmas cookies yet. And it just makes them want to bake or make whatever is being mentioned in the book.
So how do you find your clients, and how do you have they given you any ideas for like other products that you've launched within your baking repertoire?
Mm, like as far as specific baked goods.
Yeah.
So a lot of my clients are very fortunate that just right place, right time. Like often, my setup, I'm not sure if you've seen it for pop-ups, but I have these boxes that look like books, and I hollowed them out, so that's what the cookies actually sit in. So then I also have, a photo of Poe on the table. Um, so when you glance at it, a lot of people, I literally see them just like put the brakes on and they do a double take, like what is that going on over there? And then they'll come over and they'll read each cookie name, and it's one of my favorite parts, honestly, watching them read the names, and you can see the moment when it clicks, like they get the reference. And if they don't, they'll ask. And when I mention the book, then they'll be like, oh, that's right. But a lot of it has been right place, right time. Book lovers happen to see it. They stop by. They love what we're doing, and then they follow us on social media. Or I actually get quite a few orders for book clubs as well, which is so fun. Um, yeah, right place, right time. There have been customers that have mentioned, uh, you should do this kind of Rice Krispie treat, or you should make this kind of cookie. Or I oftentimes will have people reach back out or ask, like, hey, when is this cookie coming back? Like I did a snickerdoodle cookie with cinnamon chips and white chocolate chips, and it was called A Song of Sugar and Spice. And I actually had somebody ask me during the Valentine's Day pop up, like, hey, when's that one coming back? So I'll just like make a mental note, like, oh, I should probably bring that one back soon.
Yeah, so I was interested in sort of what were your best selling cookies and Rice Krispie treats and other baked items during Halloween, Thanksgiving, or Halloween, Christmas, and Valentine's Day, just so
Yeah.
people can get a feel for what you've done in the past.
So I think all time, not specific to a holiday, all time bestseller has been Shelley, which I named that one after Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein, of course. But Shelley's a salted honey pistachio cookie. So it's really unique. It's really different. It's not too sweet. It's nicely balanced because it has white chocolate in there. And then the pistachios, like it's probably my favorite cookie as well. But for Halloween, think what I released. Mask of the Red Velvet, that's a big one. That one originally released during the Poe collection for last Valentine's Day. And that's a red velvet skull shaped cakelet. And it's a nod to Mask of the Red Death by Edgar Allan Poe. So that one's a really, really good one. I actually brought those back this Valentine's Day as well, and they sold like almost instantly each day at the pop up. But oh, last year for Halloween, I released Scary Cakelets to Eat in the Dark. So that was really fun because I found this cast iron pan that had different monster shapes. So it had like Frankenstein, mummy, werewolf, a witch. Like it had all these different monsters. So I packaged the cakelets in these little boxes so you didn't know what monster you were gonna get. So it was a luck of the draw thing, and people we're just so excited to see like, oh, what monster did you get? Like, oh, I got the Frankenstein. Did you get the mummy? Like it was so fun. So those were really, really neat. For Christmas, trying to think, I did a Christmas caramel. I actually made that one specifically for a Christmas carol, and then I brought it back for my pop-up as well for Christmas. I didn't do too many. Actually, I only did one event last December because we ended up traveling for my 30th birthday. So I did take a few weeks off to recover from the first year in business. But then this year for Valentine's Day, trying to think, Curse Breaker. I released Curse Breaker, and that's a nod to, A Court of Thorns and Roses. But that one's a dark chocolate strawberry cookie, and that one's really, really good as well.
That sounds amazing. So I think we've got your website up. I think Geneva was playing it during the interview. But for anybody that wants to get in touch with you, wants to order some cookies for a book club or another event, how do they do that?
So on our website, there is an order request tab, and they click that, and then it'll have, a couple areas that they'll fill in, like name, email, requested pickup date, requested pickup time. And then on the left, it typically has all of our flavors for the month. And they can enter, how many they want of each, the requested pickup date. And once I receive the order, I can review it, make sure, I do have availability that day. And then I reply back and I can send an invoice and that's it. And then I'll write it down on my books.
Great. Well, I hope everything is gonna keep going well for you. This was just such an inventive idea, and I'm so glad you're getting some press attention. I saw that Forrest Sanders from Channel 5 did a story on you recently, and I'd
Yes.
actually been planning it, and I was like, oh gosh. So
Yeah, that was just such a wonderful opportunity. That was just so much fun too. He's so kind. And we had fun, talking about books and also, movies. He's a big movie lover as well. So yeah, he was really, really kind.
I have not had the chance to meet him yet, but he's like my favorite person in Nashville media that I don't work with. So
Definitely.
um just like geek out over his reporting. It's really great. But Crystal, thank you so much for joining us. And we're happy to promote Literary Flower, and I'll hopefully be ordering something from you soon, or at least seeing you at one of the pop-ups. So have a
Yeah.
great week and good luck with the rest of the year.
Thank you so much. You have a great weekend.
You too. Bye. All right, so we'll be sharing some of this stuff on social media if you want to get some cookies for the spring or some other baked goods. So our next segment is focusing on a movie that actually came through Nashville about a week and a half ago, and it's called The Sweet East. I know this is kind of a jump ahead. We've not really finished talking about all the major Oscar movies yet, but we have a couple of weeks because the Oscars aren't until the 10th. And I wanted to make sure that everyone knows that this movie is playing in Nashville because it really is a treat. It's a can't miss film. If this had come out last year, it definitely would have been in my top 10. So The Sweet East is a movie that is directed by Sean Price Williams, who indie fans might know from his work with the Safety Brothers, like Good Time or Heaven Knows What, or some of Alex Ross Perry's movies, such as Listen Up, Philip, or Queen of Earth. He's known for his kind of intrusive close up camera work that has really sort of set him apart from a lot of other cinematographers. He also likes shooting on film. So this movie was shot in 16 millimeter. As you can see, there's kind of this grainy, ethereal look about the movie that really makes it not look like anything else that's being released now. He also uses a lot of natural lighting as well, which you can see in some of these clips. This was a movie that kind of fell by the wayside a little bit in terms of premiered at a lot of the festivals in the fall. It got released by kind of the hip label Utopia, who did Dasha Nekrosova's The Scary of 61st and Jane Scrimmahern's whatever, really for sure. But we're all going to the World's Fair. So a lot of smaller releases. The film stars Talia Ryder, and it basically is a picaresque. So she is from South Carolina. She's on a tour of Washington, D.C. with her class. She gets separated from her class and kind of goes on this journey up the East Coast. So she hits New Jersey and she encounters a lot of different facets of American subculture. So she starts off with some artivists, as they call themselves, some trust fund kids with like lots of genital piercings and some kind of vague ideology to combat the man. And then she moves on to one of the more interesting segments of the film, which is with a white supremacist academic played by Simon Rex, who you might recognize from VH1 25 years ago or Sean Baker's recent movie Red Rocket. And they have this kind of, very touching relationship, which is not really where I thought the film was going to go. And then she ends up being discovered by some filmmakers on the streets of New York, and it's to act in a movie with Jacob Elordi from Euphoria and Priscilla and Saltburn, who's playing this sort of heartthrob like he is in real life. And then she ultimately ends up in a maybe not Muslim Brotherhood sort of sleeper cell camp where everybody's obsessed with EDM music. And I know a lot of people might be hearing this summary and thinking, wow, this movie sounds terrible. But what's really remarkable about this film is the way that Sean Price Williams doesn't judge his characters. A lot of people that have reviewed the movie, a lot of critics have said that they don't really understand the point of the movie, that he's not really making fun of these various groups. But the point of the movie is that he's showing us how all of these fringe groups have more in common with each other than they do with the general American public. That there's something lost in the fabric of our culture by everybody sort of going into these niches and bubbles and not talking about the things that commonly make us American. So I would highly recommend that everybody goes and check out this movie this week. I don't think it's going to be playing very long at the Belcourt, which is a shame. I'm very sad that I missed what was the Sweet East tour, where the screenwriter and some members of the crew of the movie were going around to various places and doing these one night shows. And I'm very happy that the Belcourt did bring it back for at least this week long run that's happening this week. So please check it out this weekend. I would definitely make this a top priority if you have the chance. We also have a lot of other films that have come out. This week was kind of strange because of Valentine's Day. A lot of movies were released actually on Valentine's Day, and then some other stuff was released on Friday. So The Sweet East obviously is going to be my pick for the movie that everybody should see this week. It really is a revelatory experience. I don't want to talk it up too much, but please go see it. The other movie you've probably heard much more about is Madam Web, the new Spider-Man franchise film starring Dakota Johnson and Sydney Sweeney. I don't know why that Sony, not Marvel, it is a Marvel movie, but this is one of these Sony Spider-Man movies. I don't know why they decided to hire the writers of Morbius to write this film as well, but they did. And the movie right now is sitting pretty at a 17% rotten rating. I don't know that I buy it. I'm still going to go see this movie because I think Dakota Johnson is one of the best actors of her generation. She's just an incredible performer. So I'll be checking this one out, but reviews have not been great, and it looks like it's being set up as a punchline. Whenever the mob kind of comes for a movie like this, I get a little skeptical just because of the fact that it seems like a pile on. So, I guess we'll be seeing that in the coming weeks. Another movie that I don't want to judge a movie by its cover, but based on seeing the director's other films, I'm pretty convinced is not going to be any good, is the new movie Bob Marley, One Love. It's directed by Ronaldo Marcus Green, who made King Richard with Will Smith, the infamous movie that he won the Oscar for and slapped Chris Rock at during the ceremony. That was for King Richard. He also made a movie called Joe Bell with Mark Wahlberg, who's walking across America because his gay son committed suicide. Ronaldo Marcus Green just kind of makes these very cookie cutter, almost like directed and conceived by AI biopics that are supposed to be these socially relevant movies. And I've always found his work very empty, very by the numbers. I've not found a lot in it that I like outside of a few performances. So obviously this one's about Bob Marley, and it's doing really well at the box office. It set a Valentine's Day record. So time's going to tell over this holiday weekend with President's Day exactly how far this movie is going to go, how much it's going to connect with audiences. I'm sure I'll eventually see it, but I'm not necessarily happy about it at all. So those are kind of our major releases this week. We also have some other events coming to the Belcourt. This week is a big one for the Swoon series at the Belcourt. Casablanca will be showing, The Notebook will be showing, and My Bloody Valentine, the 1981 slasher movie. That one's going to be showing as well at the Belcourt. And we're working our way up to the restored version of, as you see, Richard Linklater's Before trilogy. We also have the Russell Crowe film with two of the Hemsworth brothers, not Chris, The Badland, which is about a group of mercenaries who get stranded in the Philippines, and actually Land of Bad, excuse me, not The Badland. But this movie has been kind of dropped into theaters. It looks really appealing to me. I mean, I think I'm probably going to go and see it for myself, just because it looks like one of these kind of like nice B grade Jason Statham, Gerard Butler action thrillers that's really nice this time of year. And it's always good to see Russell Crowe working. He's kind of going in that Mel Gibson direction where he's making a lot of smaller action movies like this that seem very catered to niche audiences. But this one looks cool. Looks like a great way to spend a winter night. Those are kind of my picks for the week. And that brings us to the end of the weekly film rundown and the end of the show this week. So whatever you're up to this weekend, give it some thought. Have a good one. Bye.